Redditors who grew up with overly permissive parents. What was the most absurd thing you were allowed to do? My mum let me travel to another city at 15 to meet a guy I met on Yahoo Chat. 15 years later we're married with 3 kids. But WTF mum. I was allowed to saddle up my horse, take my Savage 22/20 gauge over under gun, some beef jerky, a canteen, a sleeping bag and bedroll tied to my saddle and ride up into the Ochoko Mountains and camp overnight, then ride back the next day. Also did the same with my motorcycle. I was about 13 or 14 at the time. That sounds fun, actually. Wish I didn't live in a crappy one-horse highway town. As a kid my parents were perfectly okay with me flipping the golf cart into the ditch, towing people behind ATVs on plywood, making pipe bombs, and shooting each other with Roman candles. However, they didn't let me watch Harry Potter because they didn't want my faith to be in witches and wizards. Tries to figure out which of my cousins you are. My friend's mother was an extremely relaxed parent. He could do pretty much anything and she would say, "Patrick, stop." Well, one fine December day my friend thought it would be funny to see how flammable the fake trees are. He lit a match and held it to the plant. We were still in his house at this point when the plant caught fire. He picked it up and tried to put into the sink to spray water on it, but the faucet didn't reach the plant. My brother picked up the plant. Now this thing is fully on fire, and threw it into the snow. His mother stood there the entire time, watched this whole thing go down and only said to Patrick, "Don't do that again." My mother was insanely strict, but she used to send me to spend summers with her sister because she couldn't afford summer camp or anyone to watch me. My aunt gave 0 shoots and didn't want to be bothered with me. I was left to my own devices to, wait for it, wander around downtown Seattle, alone, at like 10-11 years old. I am a girl. I did not have a phone. I did have plenty of go away and leave me alone cash. I was not required to check in, or even be home by any certain time. This was in the 90s. As a kid, it was amazing. As an adult, I cringe when I think of how easily something horrible could have happened. My mother told me at an early age that one day I would rebel, and instead of fighting me she's going to guide me through it. Said that she'd rather know what drugs I'm doing and which women I'm dating so that she can provide said guidance than for me to hide it. Said that she wanted me to sow my wild oats while I was young, so that I could buckle down when it really mattered. And, well, that's exactly what she did, and all of it was absurd. We were dirt poor, living in a mobile home in the crappy part of town when I turned 12. Between child support, disability and welfare she was only getting about $600 mo. When she went after my father for more child support, raising it from $50 mo to $400 mo, he countersued for custody. That was fun, so she had to sell drugs to get by, making our trailer the trailer everyone always hung out at. My teenage years were a non-stop party. I'd normally wake up to find upwards of 10 people crashed on the floor in a single wide. I started smoking, drinking and being active in my private life since 12. Herb at 13, acid and M at 14. I was also 13 when I had my girlfriend move in for the first time. She kept running away from home, the last time getting in a truck with a random dude who was going to take her to Texas, and our moms agreed maybe it was best she stayed with us for a while. From that point forward my mother had no qualms with girls sleeping over. That said, I haven't had an empty bed since I was 15, and have 0 experience being single, which I see as a bad thing. But what can I do? While my home life was a constant party, school life was miserable. I was always the hated kid, the poor, dirty, dorky kid that people loved to frick with for the sport of it. The rest didn't want to associate with me out of fear of being targeted. Because of the contrast between home and school I had a tendency to, well, not go. Got sent to BD school in 7th grade and expelled 4 times in high school. To her credit, she was able to use the situation to make friends of all of my friends and use them to control me. They would do whatever she wanted because they didn't want to lose their invitation to the party. If she didn't like someone she would turn the group against them. She knew everything I ever did. 2. She was like a mob boss, whose only purpose in life was me, and she was right about sowing my wild oats. By the time I was 18 I was pretty over partying. Didn't care much for most drugs anymore. Was tired of chasing bus and just wanted a real girlfriend, etc. And went into said relationship with ample experience for my age. I ultimately got an engineering degree and will have been married 16 years in 4 days. Live a nice, quiet middle class existence. That's quite a success story, I'd say. I grew up in a nudist household, so you could spend the whole day naked if you wanted to. It didn't seem weird to me, but I've met some people who mentioned they would enjoy that. People who say they would enjoy nudism are either 1. Actually right 1% chance. 2. So freaking wrong 99% chance. Everyone wants to be a nudist when talking about hot girls. Less want that when we're talking about parents, old people. Not my parents, who were moderately permissive, but had a friend in HS whose parents would get high with him, supplied his younger brother alcohol and Vicodin on request, etc. Fast forward to today, both have major addiction and self-medication issues. Anecdotally, you can be a chill parent, but don't freaking enable and encourage your child's substance use. 1. Anecdotally was key for me there, as it would be for anyone else here, and too many of the responses that say it worked out well for me usually feature a parent that is still moderating in some capacity, though, protecting from impaired driving, interacting with dealers, bad product, etc. I'm Marizo, talking about the type of parent who sets no limits and just wants to be 16 again. It's my belief that such an approach tends to install an idea that substance use is always okay and always a viable solution. I didn't do anything terrible, I don't think. Mostly I just stayed up way too late and skipped school a lot. Still did all the homework and graduated on time. Probably the worst thing I did on a school night was sneak into my church around 2 AM. It wasn't technically a B&D because as a youth leader I had my own key. We played the pipe organ and made Coke floats and nachos in the kitchen. I think the next morning I told my parents I went out and would go to school late. They called in sick for me. Coke floats and nachos. Wholesome. Upper middle class upbringing here. My parents got me a car and didn't give a crap about what I did as soon as I got my license. I once drove 150 miles to Baltimore after high school one day to get some crab cakes. Understandable. Proper crab cakes are the best, and you can't beat blue crabs. I started smoking herb in the house at 15. Tried to keep it hidden and only did it in the middle of the night when parents were fast asleep. But this one time my parents were going away for a weekend and they missed their flight and they came home without texting me and walked in on a few friends and I smoking in the living room and watching Netflix. Dad walks in and immediately smells it. He looks at me and tells me, "Open the window, jackass, you're going to stink up the house." They found a more expensive ticket and left later that night. I feel for him. If I had a kid 15 and he's smoking pot in my house, there are two things to consider. He is going to do it whether I allow him to or not. And I'd rather him do it where I know he and his friends are safe and not on the street or somewhere worse. My parents weren't purposely over permissive, but they were heavy drug addicts for the first 20 years of my life. They just didn't have the capacity to properly raise children. I was a full-blown crack and H addict by age 15 and they did absolutely nothing about it. I did literally anything I wanted with no repercussions. I mean, they knew their daughter was a prostitute and even encouraged it at times. But they've been clean a few years now, and without the drugs they're really good parents to my little brother, and I myself have a little over 9 months clean. Congrats on being clean. I wanted to try mushrooms when I was about 16. I told my mom and she agreed to trip-sit me, basically let me and my friends do mushrooms in the living room. She helped us steep it into tea, and then once we were all gone, she carefully timed her steps and ordered a pizza, baked cookies and watched movies with us, making sure everyone was having a happy hippie trip. To this day, my mom advocates her happy hippie trips of doing drugs with a sober babysitter. I've now moved out. I do smoke cannabis with prescription, but I'm a rather functional human being with no party drive, but a deep love of quality time with my mom over a pizza. This one is actually pretty cool. From the age of 15 I didn't have a time that I had to be in it on the weekends. I would stay out until 3 or 4 AM drinking on the streets with my mates, come home and go to bed. Not a word would be said to me the next day by my parents. When I was 16, myself and a group of my mates decided to get the boat from Ireland to Wales and get a train up to Manchester to see if we could score some football tickets. We left on the Friday morning and didn't come home until the following Monday. My mum called me on the Sunday asking me where I was. I told her I was at the football and she said enjoy, that she wasn't putting a dinner out for me, so I was living in Dublin at the time. I had crazy arbitrary rules growing up, but my friends always insisted I could do whatever I wanted. The biggest was that I was allowed free range to try new things. Want to make cookies from scratch? Having never even seen it done? Give it a whirl. Want to make an entire lean-to-survival shelter from things you get out of the woods? Watch out for snakes and be careful with the machete. Want to ramp the road by the railroad with your bike? Listen for the train and pay attention to traffic. I was allowed to make a mess, get hurt, make my own fun from an early age. It was pretty great. If it doesn't kill you, disable you or get you pregnant, you can fix and recover from it. Have fun, no permanent damage. I had an older brother who went to Penn State. At the time, it was at its peak in being a huge party school and was a top contender in those infamous rankings. We lived 2 hours away, and I was only a junior in high school who had just gotten his license not too long ago. I would often tell my parents I was taking the car to drive and visit my brother Asu for the weekend. They were just like, okay, have fun, be safe, no questions asked. Also, if you bring your little bother to a college party and tell them they're thinking of going to the university, everyone makes it an effort to get you super fricked up. High school me had a good time, but always surprised me my parents actually let me go, and with so little resistance. We used to drive down to Madison for the Halloween block party when we were in high school. It jaded me as to what a good party should be, that is for sure. When I was a younger girl, most of my best friends were boys. Mum constantly allowed me to have sleepovers at these boys' houses. Guess what happened? We'd stay up all night playing video games and watching movies. Shrug. Me too. A woman my mom worked with tried to tell her how irresponsible it was to let me stay overnight with the guys. My mom assured her nothing was going on. I would have told her, and 2 years later that woman's 16-year-old daughter turned up pregnant. It was amazing. I was allowed to have girls stay over from like 15 plus. My mum didn't want me shagging in a park or anything like that. Only disadvantage was the remarks, such as at least someone round here is having fun, or my personal favorite, I had to turn the bloody telly up with all that racket. Love you, Mum X. But you missed out on the greatest of teenage adventures. Trying to find somewhere secluded enough to frick in your car, but not so secluded that you will get murdered by transients. My parents used to facilitate my underage drinking. Anytime I would go to a party, my mum would pick up a bottle for vodka for me. What happened when I reached legal drinking age? I had a few beers and went home. Same here. My parents' liquor policy was don't touch the good vodka. I never took advantage of it, and now I'm a total lightweight. Buddy of mine had a mom who would let us blaze at his house, so that we wouldn't get caught by cops smoking on the street. Makes sense, but at the time, 16-17, it blew my mind that she'd be okay with it. My dad's rule was that I could do whatever I wanted, but I had to live with the consequences of those actions. Do you want to drink? Fine, but understand the pain of a hangover. Do you want frick unprotected? Fine, but you'll have to get a job and pay for the child. Do you want to quit school? Fine, but understand the difficulty that will cause you in finding a job. Because my father made sure I understood the consequences of poor choices that I was free to make, I never made any. I think teaching the consequences of actions and things like cause and effect is one of the best ways to let children have freedom to choose. Teaching it young will make them have a good understanding of it when they get to the age of hangovers and fricking unprotected. Allowing me to go to Cancun, Mexico for spring break with 3 other friends. I was 16 years old. What were they thinking? I was a 16-year-old girl. My other 3 friends were girls as well. This was 1991, before social media and cell phones. It really hit me when I had teenagers of my own. I asked my parents when I got older why they let me do whatever I wanted. The response I got was, you were going to do what you wanted anyway. Seriously, what were they thinking? From the age of 10 or 11 on, basically no oversight whatsoever. Both parents worked at night. Had a babysitter that didn't even watch me. Could do literally anything 4 or 5 nights out of the week including weekends from around 8 PM till 5 AM. Have parties, roam the streets, drink alcohol. They never check their liquor amounts. Complete freedom. You know what I did? Virtually nothing. Few parties but didn't drink. Everyone else had to be home so I'd be home too. I basically didn't use any of the freedoms. Never did drugs. Never drank. So boring. The longest leash in the world and didn't wander. Not sure if I was just a great kid or if all that freedom took the excitement out of going crazy. Drinking wine, whiskey with my dad when I was 14-15. And after when I was out at a party I could call my mom to take me back home at any time. Me being drunk or not, they taught me how to drink and to know my limit. That helped me a lot later in my life. Sounds like you had great parents that taught you well. When I was at school, my mom allowed me to drink and smoke. There were limits, of course, but she said that she'd rather allow it than knowing we are doing it behind her back. Also could listen to any music. So when my friends were listening to Backstreet Boys, I was listening to Eminem and Papa Roach and things like that. Also went out a lot, and my mom would drive me, even before I turned legal. The only time she became strict was when my marks dropped. Then she was a bit more strict, but I kept my marks good and had an awesome school life. They allowed me to get a tattoo when I was 13, rainbow butterfly on my shoulder, then 15, crow on my chest, and 16, large black piece on my chest. I regret every single one, especially the chest piece, which I had modified over the years, and will need continual touch-ups because my skin doesn't really like ink. When I was 14 I spent a year in the Ukraine. Just me and my sister, 18. We didn't go to school, and we pretty much did whatever we wanted. My parents lived in the US. Also, a rabbi handed me my first beer when I was 9. Not me, but a classmate of mine in 3rd grade, a long time ago. He invited me over to visit his house one day, a few blocks away from mine. My parents were relatively strict, but I was a little amazed when they let me go. His room was decorated with wallpaper showing little figures of naked people demonstrating every carnal position imaginable. He had piles of magazines with naked women in them. I was uncomfortable as I'd ever been and was not prepared for this. Remember, 3rd grade, 8-9 years old. I definitely had not hit puberty yet. I don't remember much else about the visit, aside from finding it weird that we were somehow having a normal discussion among all these distractions. Did not tell my parents about that when I got home, though. They didn't let me go farther than a block away from home as it was. They didn't let me join the Boy Scouts because they were convinced I'd get physically shamed abused. Hearing about this, they'd probably never let me leave the house again. Perhaps I should contribute to that other thread about strict parents, but the comments there make mine seem tame by comparison. Not my story, but in grade 11 at school, second last year, a kid in my class just stopped showing up. It went on for about a fortnight and it got weird. Teachers were really strange about it, all these rumors. Then finally, after about 2 months, boom, he's back. It turns out his dad took a job overseas and his stepmother didn't speak English. So this kid told her it was school holidays and then intercepted calls from the school when they started and pretended to be his dad and told the school he'd enrolled his son in another school. I don't know what his plan was. His dad came home, ripped him apart, came to the school and ripped them apart for how dumb they must be to fall for it. That's not overly permissive. He just tricked everyone. I was allowed to watch South Park in 1st grade, mostly because my older brother in 5th was allowed to. I was the coolest kid on the playground. 2001. My mom had no issue whatsoever with me hanging with the punks. I slept in parks, public park houses, under bridges, would drink and sometimes first come home at 2-3 AM. This was when I was 14-16, if at all, etc. As long as I went to school, she was okay with it. Same later on when I, 17, moved in with my former boyfriend, 21. She was okay with it as long as I had my phone with me. By 12 I was drinking daily. By 14 I stayed out most nights till 4 AM drinking and smoking with adults. By 15 I was going to raves, doing coke, X, B and S, tagging crap with the homies, doing acid, traveling all over the state. AMD I barely graduated due to missing about 100 days a year or more. Ended up getting into trouble with the law for getting into fights. Stuck me in a program for a year and by 18 I had given it all up in favor of being a decent tax-paying American. Whoa, my 12-year-old has an 8:30 p.m. school night bedtime. Around the age of 15 I turned my shed into a gaming drinking drug hangout. Acid, E, mushrooms, weed, K, you name it. We did it in that shed. Had power run to it with a SNES, and original Xbox, a couple couches, TV, light, and radio. Was totally cool for 2 summers straight. At one point I had like 15 people chilling in the backyard all fricked up and like 8 in the shed lol. My mum let us drink in the basement because if you're going to do it, might as well do it where I know you're safe. She wouldn't let us get plastered. Only I think once did we have someone throwing up. It was around the time when we were 1-2 years away from the legal age. That and letting people stay over because drinking and driving is bad. And drinking and walking home isn't safe either. None of them weeds though. Those things were dangerous. My mum was a cool mum and everyone always loved her and her weird not so much anymore Scouseish accent. I lived at the beach in a tent for a couple of months between my junior and senior years of high school. My folks didn't even realize that I was gone. Username checks out. I know a lot of families don't like buying pets or need to sit down and talk about it, but one day I decided I wanted a bird so I went and got it and no problems at all. See, the yawing, critter crazy me would have taken that as a challenge and bring home increasingly bigger animals. My mom grew up with really controlling parents and she decided her best route as a parent would be the opposite. I basically had the freedom to do what I want as long as I informed my mom about it. It was nice not having to hide things and I generally stayed away from ruining my freedoms but doing anything stupid. Not me but my cousin. His mom would let us smoke and watch pee in his house when we were 13/14. She was cool. My cuz ended up doing coke and crap but honestly I believe it was more peer pressure. He went to a crappy school than anything else. My parents bought me over 500 pounds of stuff to grow weed, then let me set it up in the corner of my bedroom. I still have no idea why the frick that was allowed. I barely smoked then and I think I was possibly just trying to find the boundaries. Turns out there were none. They were trying to turn you into a horticulturalist. To be fair, I've wasted tons of money on my children's wants. Turns out they've rarely made use of it. It's hard as a parent to figure out what will be useful and what is a waste of money. I lived in NZ for a period of time. When I was 9, my mum gave me $100 to spend in whatever. My parents are willing to let me drink and do drugs when I want, apart from a couple of drugs like Ket and M. I don't do drugs but I like a glass of wine now and again. I don't do drugs due to my mental health, please stop. No, I do not want to do weed. It smells and the wrong strand will make me worse. I shall stick to what I know works. Talking to people and a good night's sleep. When I say trip I refer to the experience whether you hallucinate or just feel something while on drugs. Chill out, I'm not stupid. Ket and M. I'm probably gonna only allow marijuana to my kids. Opiates, H, C and cigarettes will be banned though. When I do have kids I'll make sure I educate them on proper usage. I wasn't allowed to have friends over past a certain hour. There was never any drinking allowed under my parents' roof, but they would let me stay at a friend's house every single day knowing dang well I was drinking my butt off. That way it's not their fault if cops somehow got involved. Coming from an exceedingly strict household, I would have given my left nut for just 10 seconds without my folks' overbearing dominance. Of course, I went bonkers in my 20s. I'm in my 40s now, but still struggle with different neuroses and phobias. Parents, don't smother your kids. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.